In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up your PSD template file so that you can automatically replace text in batch with sports photo automation. In addition to replacing the text, you can also automatically resize the text during the batch as well. Sports photo automation has the option to use a CSV or TSV data file. This is optional, and this is the file you would need to do text replacement, among other things, automatically in batch. Now, CSV is a comma separated value file. TSV is a tab separated value file. They work exactly the same. You can use either one, except in the case where you have commas in your data, then you would need to use a tab separated value file. So once you have your file, you would just load it here and then run your batch, which I'm not going to be doing in this video. Instead, I'm going to be using the test text replacement area, because if the replacement works okay and the resizing works okay here, it will work in batch. This works identically to how the batch processor replaces the text. So your data file is going to look something like this. The first column is going to have the image file names in the column. All of the other columns are going to have data, and this is going to vary depending on your Photoshop template. You're only going to use columns for the data items that you need. So it may only be one column with one text item for the player's name, or it could be 12 columns with different text items and resizing and Photoshop actions. And there's quite a few different things you can do in the CSV file. And for this video, I'm going to be solely discussing text replacement in this file. So to set up your PSD file, there's a few things you need for your layers. And the first thing is your text layers need to be set up with the proper layer name. And so for the case of this template, there's 3 layers. There's a year, a name, and a team name. And you can have more items, but this is just what I'm using for this example. And so this is our name, and then our year, and then our team name. And those have to be named in a very specific way, and they have to be all caps, no spaces. If you want to see the exact layer names that you have to use in your PSD template, you can go to the website. I thought I was already there. I must have closed it. All right, so under the tutorial section, there'll be sports photo automation. And then if you scroll down to the CSV file setup, this contains all of the information for exactly how the data in that file is going to be used. So get familiar with this document if you're going to be using the data files. And it's a real handy document to go through. It's going to answer all the questions you need. But under the text replacement section, this contains all of the valid layer names for your PSD file. There's 15 different names. There's 10 common layer names for common items. And then there's 5 placeholders, SPA text 1 through 5. You would use these if you had things like height and weight and age and things that are not contained in the first 10 items. And so that's the first thing, is your layers must be named those names. Another way that you can see what the layer names need to be, this is the way that I recommend doing it. Well, there's actually 2 ways to do this, but I'll demonstrate this first, and then I'll briefly talk about the easier way with H&H next. But if you're not using H&H, then you would go to this CSV or TSV starter, and then you would select the items that you wanted for your specific template. Now, you don't have to use text replacement for all of your text layers. So in the example, if this year was current and it said 2022 and we didn't need it, you wouldn't need to check that. But If you don't want to have to update your template, you can use this year too and just update it in your CSV file. And then this is going to have team name and name. And for name, it's broken out name or first name and last name. So if you have the entire name in one text layer, you would use name. If you've got a separate text layer for first name and last name, you would use these. And then under the resize column, there's different methods for automatically resizing your text. And that is for the cases where your text will be either too short or too long. How does it handle that situation to fit it into the template? I'll be discussing these more in a minute when I demonstrate it, but for this template, I'm going to use XM for name and X for team. And these are your two most common modes you'll use is X and XM. So from here, I would hit create CSV or TSV file, whichever kind of file you want to use. Then it's just going to ask you for a folder. So you select the folder that has your cutout images and then hit open. Then it's going to create a data file in that folder. And so it's going to be called SPA-data, and you can rename that whatever you want. I just made an additional one, so I've got -2, so it's not going to erase your last one. It'll just put an extension on it. So if I open this data file, let's open it in a different program here. So this is going to have the layer names that you need already in here. It's going to put your resize modes in and also your image names from that folder. You will have to fill out your data, but these text layer names are the exact names you need to use in your template for anything you want to replace. So you see name, team name, and year, all caps, no spaces. So in our PSD, why can I not get back here? Let's see. Oh, because this is open. Photoshop doesn't like that pop-up. Open. Okay. All right, so in your PSD file, you have to have those layer names exactly to match your CSV file. And that's how it's going to know which text to put in what layer. So it's going to, when it opens this image here with this image name, it's going to look for these text layer names and it's going to replace the text that is in these cells with the exact text that's in your data file. And then anything that says resize hyphen with the same layer name, it's going to use that as your resize code for how it is resizing the text, which I'll explain here in just a moment. So the next thing you need to do, if you're setting up your own PSD file, after you've named these, you're going to need to make sure those are in point text format and not paragraph text format. Now, most templates you buy online, most of the designers do use point text already. But if you right-click on the text, if it says convert to paragraph text, then it already is point text. So let me convert that here. If you right-click again, and make sure you're right-clicking anywhere except for, I think it's, yeah, so don't right-click on the styles. You just right-click right here in this empty space. Then you're looking for either convert to point text or convert to paragraph text. And since that says convert to point text now, it's actually now in paragraph text. And I'll show you the difference here. In paragraph text, you have this bounding box. And if you add too many characters, it wraps down to the next line. Now, if you're in point text, you no longer have that bounding box. So your text is just going to expand and it's never going to wrap. And that's what you need for the auto text replacement, because if you have your bounding box set to the edge of the letters, but then you throw in a longer name, it's going to wrap to the next line. So you have to make sure that's in point text. And SPA is not even going to run, or it'll run, but it's not going to replace text in that layer if it's not set to point text. It's just going to skip over that. Now, in the PSD template setup area here, there is a button called Convert to Point Text. So if you just click that, it's going to find any of those 15 layer names that are in your document, and only those names, and it's going to convert all of those layers to point text for you. So you don't have to go through each layer and do it. You just need to click one button and it's going to do that. Now, if you have other text layers in your document that are not one of those 15 designated names, it's going to leave those layers alone, which is important because you might have other text in your document that you don't want to be point text and you don't want to use for SPA text replacement. So this is only going to look for those specific names. And the last thing you have to do, I guess, in order to get this to run properly and place the text as you want, is you have to decide how you want the justification of your text. So for example, let's find the player name here. This right now is using center justification. And what that means is if I go in and change the text, it's going to keep centered to where the text is. So as you add or subtract letters, it keeps the centering the same. Now, if I was to switch this to left justification, you would have to, of course, move it where you want first. But then when you put in a new name, you see that it's keeping the alignment on the left side of where it was. And the same thing with right justification. And there are use cases for all of these different justification modes. But be aware that if you're going to buy somebody else's template, make sure to check this, because I've seen a lot of templates where they are set up to a default left justification like this. But the designer then just moves that text so it's centered in the design, but it's still left justified. So if you start replacing text, then it may not be centered as you want that. So just make sure that you double click that layer and make sure this justification is exactly what you want, and then move your text if you have to. I'm going to go back to the original here. And the other thing is layer styles. So you can see that these layers each have their own different styles attached. And you can use any of these layer styles you want. That is fine. When SPA replaces the text, it's going to keep the layer style from the original layer that's in the document. So that style is going to carry over. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this test text replacement button. This is where you can test to make sure your text is replacing okay. And if it works here correctly, it is going to work in the batch processor. But I want to point something out too before we use this, because there is a bug in Photoshop. And if you see this happen, when you replace the text using that test, if you see something happen like this, where your characters are all of a sudden, some are larger and some are smaller, that is a bug in Photoshop. However, that will not affect the batch processing. That only affects this testing environment. And that's because this only happens if you run the replacement more than once. And it only happens if you've created your text layer in a certain way. And so if you see this happen, watch the next video that I'm recording. That's going to go over this bug specifically, and I'll show you how to prevent this. I don't want to go over it in this video because when Adobe fixes it, I don't want to have to redo this entire video. So it may be fixed when you're watching this video in the future, but as of now, this is a bug, and I show you in the other video how to get around that. But just know, again, that this will not affect when it runs in batch. You will only see that in the testing environment. All right, so under this test text replacement, you can use this to test your different layer names. So right now, let's put in a new first name, and I'm not going to use any resizing. Let's put in a new team name, and again, I won't use any resizing. And we'll put the year in too, why not? Most people set the year in their template and save it, but some people don't, so it's just up to you. All right, so there you see that it's replaced the text in the document, but now you see that these text sizes are different because the number of letters was different than in the original document. So let me undo this here. And that is why there is text resize modes. And by the way, back in the this document online, there's also the auto text rescaling section, and this describes what each of these modes does, and there's 6 of them that you can use. So if you forget what I discussed in this video, there's a brief description in here of what all of those do. But X and XM are the 2 most common that you will use. And let's just demonstrate X first. We'll just leave this at bulls, and let's put something a little bit longer here. All right, let's just hit, let's put our modes in. So resize mode, let's just go X on both of these. So what the mode X does is that's your horizontal scaling. And if I go to my history state, and if you look at the edges of where the left and right edges of each of these are, it's, in this case, stretch the text out so it fits the same space in the document. Now, when it scales this, it's not going to scale the height of it. It's only scaling the width, because I found that looks a lot better than scaling the height way up. So either condensing or stretching, I felt looked a lot better in the design. Now, there is also an option for XM. So what XM does, if the text is too long, it does the same thing as X. It'll shrink it down to fit the template. But if it's too short, it's not going to. So let's switch these to XM. So now you see with XM mode, it doesn't do any rescaling because the text fits within the boundaries of where the original text was, but it's not larger than that. So it's horizontal for X, maximum for M. That's what XM stands for. So it scales it down if it's beyond the maximum width, which you define in the template by your placeholder text. So let's go back here again. I'm going to, let's leave this in XM, but then let's make the team name something. Let's go Yellow Jackets. Yeah, it's something long enough. So since this is smaller than what's in here, it's not going to scale up. And since this is longer, it should scale down. And you can see that's exactly what it did. So really, actually pretty simple. There's one more thing I was going to discuss on this. I'm trying to think of what that was, though. Anyway, it must not be that important. If I can think of it, I'll come back to that. We have other scale modes as well, and that is Y, YM, A, and AM. So X, Y, and A, those are the angles of the text. So X is horizontal, Y is vertical, and A is angled. So depending on the orientation of your text, you're going to have to adjust this accordingly. So let's take our team name here. Oh, before I do this, I do remember now what I was going to discuss. Just take a minute. Let's backtrack here. So let's say you've replaced the text once with this XM mode. So now let's shrunk this down. If you're going to test another text, each time you run this, it's reanalyzing where the text is at. So now if I test it with something longer in here, you can see now it's fit that to where the team name Bulls was, because that was the name right before we replaced it. So if we look at our history state, here was our template. I did the auto text replacement once. Then when I ran it again, it's reevaluating the edges of that text. So it's always best to go back to your original design if you're going to test another text in here. Now you see that name fills the space of the original PSD. So I hope that makes sense. All right, we're going to discuss the Y and the YM modes. Now what Y is for vertical text. So two situations here. Let's just grab Arial font because it's just a demo. It doesn't really matter. It's not what I want. I want a vertical text. Ah, shoot. Okay, hold on. So the vertical text is the one with the down arrow here. So you would use Y or YM if the text was like this. But also, in addition, because this question gets asked a lot, is what if you have horizontal text, but you rotate it? So if you, like, say, rotated your team name by 90 degrees here. So in this case, the text is sideways, so it's horizontal text that's been rotated on its side, so the letters are all rotated 90 degrees. And in this case, you still use Y and YM mode. It doesn't matter the orientation of the text letters, it matters the whole orientation of the word. So if you have this here and you try to do, let's just put it to X here, and if you try to use X or XM and hit replace text, you see this yellow jacket spreads all the way out because it's matching the width of that text now and not the height. Now if we set this to Y or YM, because it's a larger text, so either way is going to work, but it's going to match the height of that. So anytime your text is tall or vertical or horizontal text rotated 90 degrees so it makes the orientation of the whole word vertical, use Y or YM. Now for the situation that your text is at an angle, you're going to have to use the A or AM mode, and you can probably figure out what that is actually. Oops, wrong one here. What that's actually for. So for the case where your text is at any kind of an angle, you have to use the A or the AM mode, because that'll actually go into all the Photoshop properties and read all of the angles of the text. It actually has to do trigonometry, believe it or not. I had to pull out, they store their values in trig values, but nonetheless, that's what it's going to do. So you're going to have to use this. In this case, let's just go AM for angled maximum. And you see that's filling the same space. Same rules apply here. If we did a smaller text and it's in angled maximum, it's going to end up shorter because it's not going to expand unless it's longer. So the same exact principles apply. Just know when to use X, Y, or A, and then know if you want it to always expand or always fit the size, or only downsize if it's larger and not upsize if it's shorter. That would be what you'd add the M for. And again, that is all on this page right here. I think that about covers it. I'm trying to look at my notes here. I don't see anything else that I missed. Oh, other than I did too want to discuss real quickly about the creation of these data files. So the auto data creator in SPA is pretty good, and it makes things pretty easy to get a starter data set. However, there's a new H&H system, and if you click on this link won't be in the Pixnub plugin forever. So if you're watching this video and you don't see this link in here, then just go to H&H website and you'll find it, because I change the links up in this software now and then. But I'll take you over to here, and H&H has a complete system for automatically creating all of your data files for you based on the information that is already in the H&H Schools software. So you're going to basically tell it how your PSD is set up, and it's going to give you a complete data file. So all of the player names and their position data and their team name data and the team file that belongs in a memory mate, as well as if you're running custom Photoshop actions, anything that you want that data file to do is going to come out of that software ready to go, so you don't even have to open Excel. And it's also going to name the files coming out of SPA, because one of the things is the CSV file will have a rename column, the new file name, and it will also rename the files to include what picture package those belong to. So when those files get re-uploaded to H&H, they automatically know what player it belongs to and the order packages for that to make the prints. So really, really cool. Anyway, I hope this helps answer any questions you have about auto text replacement. And again, make sure to watch the video where I discussed that bug that I briefly discussed earlier, where the letters become different sizes, but only when you're using this test environment, because there's a certain way those layers are set up, and I'll explain it all in that next video. And there's a certain way you set them up to prevent that from happening. Thanks for watching.